All right.
Oh, Brendan's even given us a thumbs up.
Yes, we have our thumbs up, and that means it's time to go. It's 7 o'clock. And this is the really big violin class. I think this is our sixth one. How could that possibly be true? But it is. And today we have our guest teacher is Daniel Pioro. And I have been excited about this class since the moment he responded saying that he would be happy to do it. So I'm not going to go into the hows and whys of the big class. I think most people who are here know why I've started this, that I just was really excited about a chance to share the amazing violin repertoire with people from all over the world. And today we have performers from the UK, from Canada, and from Germany, which is amazing. Daniel's in Edinburgh, and we are going to be listening to 3 movements of Bach's Partita in D minor. Just a word about Daniel and how I met him, because I think it's fun to think about how these things come about. So I freelance in London. Daniel occasionally freelances in London, and we were sat next to each other in a session for a film. And Daniel, I think, was sitting on the last desk of the first, and he kept getting up and going into one of the ISO booths and having to play. You had to play little extra things. It was sort of Irish fiddly music that was going on during the session, and it was, sessions are long. I think we were there for 9 hours that day, and as the day went on, between the little bits of chunking or whatever it was you were playing back there were these little bits of sort of gossamer violin playing that would come flying out, and I'm not entirely sure that you knew that we could all hear you.
No, I was completely unaware, just to be clear. Yeah. Yeah, no, totally.
Until we told you we could all hear you. And
Yeah.
then the little bits that started coming out got more and more elaborate. And it was just a wonderful way to get through the day. And I thought, who is this guy? So I started asking around a little bit. Who is this guy? And people said, oh, he's a great violinist. Oh, he's got a prom next week. He's playing on this prom next week. And I think I asked you about it. And you were so casual. You were just like, oh, yeah, I'm playing this prom. I'm premiering a piece that was written for me. I'm kind of excited about it, and you were just so chill about it. And then I found out a little bit more about what it was, and that it was this piece that Johnny Greenwood had written for you, and I got really intrigued. And I had plans to go, and I got sick, so I couldn't go. But I sat and I watched your broadcast, and I was just absolutely transfixed from the first moment of it. That you started with the Bieber Pascalia, and it was just the most beautiful thing I'd ever heard. And your playing is tremendous. So
You.
I'm very excited that you've agreed to join us here today.
What a pleasure for me.
So I think that's all I'm going to say. Let's just get into the Bach.
Okay.
So we'll first hear a performance of the Allemanda from Lena, and we'll share a video with you, and then we'll get to it. So here's the Allemanda.
Great. Lena,
Yeah,
I'm gonna pin your video so I can see you, talk directly to you. Can I ask you a question very between us?
yeah.
What do you feel about this movement? Firstly, I mean, congratulations on the playing, and there's a lot we could talk about, in fact, for hours. But I want to know firstly, before we go into technical things and musical ideas, what is this movement to you? Does it have any resonance? Do you have any ideas of what it represents or how you want to play it?
Yeah, I think in general, it the the key D minor is very dark,
Yeah.
and there's sort of resistance at the
Mhm.
beginning, with
Yeah.
the double.
Yeah,
And
the double
there are
note.
also some light, some places that are more bright and more,
Yeah.
yeah, light.
Great. And then a very revealing question, and I think this is a brilliant thing for us all to always ask ourselves, is what we just listened right now, how close do you think or feel it is to how you want to be playing it? And I'm going somewhere with this question.
Mm,
Do you feel distant from it? I'll tell you why I asked this question, because the Allemande and the Sarabanda in particular, out of the Partita, I always really struggled with. I think when I was much younger, I found them really boring. But of course, they're not boring. They're utter majestic. It's like poetry in music. And I was just struggling to find my interest, the thing that I think I can contribute to this music. So I always felt a bit like I was hitting my head against a wall with the Allemande and the Sarabande. And I'm wondering how this playing you just did, how closely to your final version, if we can ever have such a thing, is it?
um, yeah, I think the final version would be even closer,
Yeah,
but um, especially with the Sarabande, I also had this feeling that
yeah.
at the beginning I was very distant from it, and then I came closer and got some ideas, and then it, yeah,
Fantastic.
I understood it better
Yeah. So So given
because
we've heard you play now, and I would like to give you a few suggestions, and maybe you can react in the room. And I don't care about bad internet connections or anything. Let's just see how you react maybe to some suggestions. So the very beginning,
mhm,
you're absolutely right, D minor, and there is a certain darkness and seriousness to it.
mhm,
But it's still this vulnerability of the solo violin playing a D, this open D with it. It just adds a natural resonance. It's like the speaking voice. It doesn't, for me, need to feel like a exclamation of anything. And maybe with the same quality that you play, but making it more internal, more like an inner thought.
mhm.
Instead of speaking it like a theatrical actor, could you play just a couple of lines and take the risk of playing with an intimacy that maybe means some qualities will go a bit, a casuality, like you're improvising it. Great, wonderful, great, great, great. I This might be some unconscious bias on my part, but already it is so interesting. There is a naturalness, like a story being read to you, which is so much more charming and actually deep and in many ways more serious than just proclaiming the music. So for me, this Allemande will mean, of course, something different, perhaps, to you, and that's normal because we all interpret things differently, and I want it to mean something. I don't need you to think like me, but something perhaps that you could agree with me on is that, like poetry or a spoken word thought, we can speak very quietly and still have the intensity that we need. When I listen to the video, I appreciate some real qualities you have as a violinist, but there's a sense of relentlessness. It's like a wave of sound. And I need to breathe while listening to it. And of course, you don't need to go full on dramatic and give me peaks and lows and rests. We don't need that either. You can keep the long line. You do this brilliant long line from the very beginning of the piece, of the movement to the end. And this is fantastic. This is a real skill. But within that, the oxygen is constantly the same. It's thick. And this more internal playing you just gave now, just from this conversation, had so much air, and it was still serious. And this is maybe, if we leave this Allemande conversation, let's say the Wi-Fi connection cut off right now, that's the only thing I need you to take away from this conversation. So immediately you play and you start so beautifully. There's a sonority with the open D. But I'm going to ask you again, why does Bach write an open D? I've already told you, but just tell me anyway. Repeat it back to me.
Yeah, because of the to
Yeah,
enter the key, the
yeah,
E minor key.
absolutely, absolutely. Or it adds our importance. It adds our resonance. So it's already there. Now, can you just play it as if it's the simplest tune in the world and let the D resonate and see whether that looks after it for you? Because what happens if you go ba-bam, we're overwhelmed. We don't live and breathe in D. We sort of die in D. And we don't need that. The quality is already there. So try that. Step back from it. Very good. So this, look, you did something completely magical there. So the second time you played it, it felt like you didn't pay any attention to the upbeat semiquaver. And that was so beautiful because you see, you play the violin very well. So you don't need to be focusing consistently on look after this note, look after this note. No, sometimes you just need to let it breathe. If the semiquaver D is our whole universe, I was about to say something really rude. No, we have to say, how do you say this politely? Oh, we mess ourselves up. There we go. If we add all the importance in the world in this semiquaver, the next note, we have a problem. So all it is your in-breath and you exhale. It's in and out, ba-bam. And that's why I come back to speaking. I don't feel this is a singing movement at all. If we start going operatic up and down, we add melodrama. Just say it like it's like some lyrics or some amazing spoken word. And play a little bit longer now. I promise I'm going to stop cutting you off. And just step back. You know this more, why I use the word casual? Because it's natural music. Just try it. fantastic. Good. Lovely. Listen, that was so precious in places. I'm going to ask you now to take it one step further. So again, a question, because of course we've never met, and the first time we meet, you play me one of the greatest ever pieces for violin. So this is a very special moment. I mean, it will be between all of us here. Now, do you ever play around when you practice? Do you muck around? I use the word play literally. Are you ever silly when you practice?
Sometimes, but not so often.
Okay. You know, it's an idea. When I say silly, and I do not mean we mock what we do or we don't think, but that way of engaging with this thing, this very precious instrument that a lot of us are very sort of careful around. They're fragile, some of them are expensive. We can get very precious about what we do, and we get very precious about the doing and not the thing that we need to be precious about, and we actually lose a lot of how do you say it? We block off, because we're so serious about doing it, sort of paths to explore. So I'm going to show you something, and I'm tilting my screen just so I can just show this the best. This is not how to play in public, but with the Allemande, I sometimes try this. I talk to you about being internal and stepping back and sort of being vulnerable and taking risks. Just to play, you use the whole bow. I think between us, I think you're using a lot of bow for this, which you can be a bit more sort of sophisticated about the way you use it. But this is something we discover when we play. Now, do we find enjoyment in, or do we actually find that the resonance means that we can just go, and to be clear between us, I'm not talking about the quality here of sound to imitate, what we call perfect violin playing. I'm talking about the intention of the phrase and our playing, and which we can refine afterwards. It's very easy to go, okay, I'm going to fix this and make it better. But the fundamental of the musical idea, this is the thing that escapes a lot of people. And this is the thing that we really should focus on much more. So for me, the opening phrase has all these beautiful spoken lines. This is one thing. It's a micro phrase. It's not the end of the phrase, but it's a little peak. And then this is a nothing. It's the most beautiful nothing. It just takes us to, which leads immediately like a wave to. I added those twiddles because I'm being silly, but you see my point is that it's a little phrase at the end which just relaxes us again. And on we go. Da dee da dee da da ba bum 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 ba da da do dee. Change our minds. He does this. I mean, Bach is a genius, as we know, but he does these things that are incredible constantly. It's like you're going one way, and then he sidesteps, and then you go another. And then another. Sorry, I'm not looking at the music, but da 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 dee da da ba 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 ba. It's so many voices, and to be clear, I prefer that you play it in one line than go full on melodrama, because that's not necessary either. But just to be aware that you don't need to pronounce everything. You've already played it so much better over a slightly dodgy webcam connection just because you've stepped back from your playing. Can you play me the second half in this manner? Just take the risk of maybe losing some of your sort of perfect way of playing it, and just sit in places of interest, and then places which are completely transitional. You know what I mean? When the whole point of the music is to take you somewhere. Play through that. Let it just go. Don't sit on every note, but then sit on the ones that really mean something to you and see what happens. Good. Brilliant. So and Cecily's clapping quite right. Listen, I will leave you just with 2 points. We're almost out of time, and there's a limit to also how much to throw on our minds. We have to live with a new idea. Our first point, which while you've been playing for me, you haven't been doing, but in the video you were, is that remember that the last note of something, like the last note of the first half of this, as it were, and at the end, the dotted crotchlets, they have to bear some emotional, intellectual, and physical relation to what you've played before. So even if Bach writes, a semi-breve with a pause over it, it has to exist within the same world. Otherwise, you're force feeding, it's like data that has nothing to do with what existed before. What you just did right now was a long note that ended, which was part of the universe of sound that you've already made. And it's so beautiful. So guard that. We don't need to hear a very impressive long bow at the end of a movement.
Yeah.
It doesn't fit the context of what you've played. And right now you did it absolutely perfectly. And then there's one other point, which feel free to discard here. But bear in mind that it's not only serious music, it's also playful music. And I find these moments so funny myself, these... And it's like he pulls us back into it. And this is why I say when you practice, play around. Yes, maybe on stage you won't change fluctuating tempos all the time. But I want you to be aware that we have a piece that's serious and grounded. And then we have, let me see, because I have a score. Yeah, so we have, that's it. For me, it sounds quite serious, and it's spoken, and he sort of pulls us back in the world. And I am grossly exaggerating the character. But if you don't do that, you're not going to find a way of expressing and also playing. Because nobody is going to listen to you be free and playful and say that it was bad taste or naff unless you're just doing it to make a point. So if it's sincere, if it's real and you feel, I add lightness and skipping, people will be charmed because it's real. This is the thing. And that's why if somebody plays like I'm suggesting, but they're doing it only, let's say, because I was saying it, that would sound wrong as well. So you have everything you need to go and do some magic with this. You play the violin beautifully, and now just step back from it. Treat it more like a toy.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Right.
That's beautiful. Lena, you play very beautifully.
Yeah, I mean, this is great. Really great.
So we'll move from the Allemande to the Sarabande, which is my personal favorite movement of, I think, all Bach.
Wow.
Maybe. It's hard to say if there is a favorite, but it has been. But we're going to hear it on the viola. And so we're going to leave D minor, which might be a little bit jarring, but it'll be fantastic just the same. So this is Teo, play the Sarabande, and yeah.
I love the viola. What a great instrument. So good, right? Have you always played the viola?
Well, I started with violin a very, very long time ago,
Yeah.
but from like the fifth grade, I moved to the viola. So
Yeah. Listen,
yeah.
it's great, and this piece works perfectly. I'm not missing D minor at all. As long as we have the character and the feeling, it's really lovely. Listen, I'm going to start off by slightly repeating myself, but there's a real reason behind it, so we can quickly understand each other. Um, what does the Sarabande do for you or mean to you? And also, I have to ask you, what do you feel when you listen to the way you've just played it?
Well, I must say that my playstyle changes quite a lot. In
Hmm.
like that was recorded probably a couple of months ago, and
Okay.
now I would have played it quite differently from that. I felt
Yes.
like it was kind of like lacking a breath or something. It was a bit rushed at places, but yeah.
Yeah. And tell me about this Sarabande as well. What do you feel about it? Do you have any ideas with it, or is it? I mean, honestly, there's nothing you can say that's wrong. Maybe it's just a good piece of music to you, and that's it. I'm just wondering how you perceive this music when you engage with it.
Yeah, I feel like it's quite like intense, like feeling wise,
Yeah.
but then um, towards the end becomes like more distant and just like I don't know,
Yeah.
saying a
And
story from the far. But it's hard to say it in words.
of course it is absolutely, and this in some ways it's one why I'm provoking you to say it because a little bit like when we think something, a lot of the time you'll be suggested to write your thoughts down. There's a reason some of us keep diaries and so on. The act of putting it into words or writing it down makes it much more solid or clear in our minds. Also, very often you say something and you realize just how much you disagree with yourself. You say it and suddenly you go, what am I talking about? I mean, I experience this a lot. I promise you. And the ability to change your mind while making decisions you thought were supremely intelligent, or you had a eureka moment and you've realized as you're saying it that you've massively under or overestimated the importance of something. It's very important that we can have this self-awareness, particularly with music that's so deep as this piece. Cecily said it's possibly one of her favorite things. I hope I'm not misquoting Cecily, but anyway, it's an extraordinary movement. It's like there's no waste in this movement for a start. That everything has a purpose. It's perfect in its own way. I find this movement the hardest of all of them. Just I should also add. And I'm really intrigued by what you say about the intensity and then the way it gets lighter. Because obviously, if we look at the score, we have sort of an easily read semi-quaver passages. So this is your lighter bit, and the
Yeah.
intensity of these often quite hard to place perfectly, um, sort of double, triple, quadruple stops. And so I don't need you to answer this question, but I challenge you to ask yourself, is it intense because it's harder to play, or is the music actually more intense? You
I,
don't there's no answer necessarily for this immediately, but I want you to think about this because for me this piece is one whole beautiful gem that doesn't have to be complex and then simple. It inhabits all the same world. We're not talking about technique right now because we've got 25 minutes. I'm sure you play really well. You obviously taught very well. I really feel you clearly love the instrument. Don't tell me if I'm wrong, by the way. I want to go away thinking you do. And so we don't need to talk about intonation, all that stuff. You know these things. So be vulnerable with this chord, this opening chord, this. After hearing you play it on the viola, I much prefer the lower tone. Okay, so this is a bit harsh.
Thank
But
you.
this thing, I find this opening chord really difficult. And it's one of the reasons why a lot of violinists, right, so I'm going out on a limb here, even my dearly valued colleagues who play the violin immeasurably well, why a lot of people go and then they relax. It's because there's this fear of bringing, I don't know, a perceived lack of quality into our playing. But the reality is, if we had complete control over our playing, we just pronounce this chord like it's the most simple thing. Brum, bum, 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 bum. And there is no point in existing if we're not going to be idealistic. So I need you to attempt it. I don't care what it sounds like. I would like to see you play this opening line, which I really do think is is possibly the hardest thing in this whole partita for me, with the same care and lightness but focus that you do. Just try it. Good. Great. Instant provocation. Keep your viola up, okay? Have you thought about what the interesting chord in the first bar is? Or no, that's wrong. You see, I'm changing my mind as I speak. What our direction could be. So for me, my personal feeling is it's the second thing. Briam, pam, bam, briam, pam. Now, I'm not saying the first one is irrelevant. It's not. But we don't exist on this thing and then the rest is a reaction. No, it takes us somewhere. Just react to what I've just said and see how you play. Just play me the first two bars. Look, great. Look, no. You're adjusting a different idea, technique, blah, blah, blah. Who cares? What you've done there, even with the things you don't like and there's stuff we work on, we immediately have space and breath, not forced, but natural between the dotted crotchet in the middle. Dum, bum, bum, beam, pum, dum. And it's not dramatic. It's not forced. You instinctively do it because you moved somewhere. And this moving means the piece stays alive. It means you can play at half speed. Don't because we'll be here forever, and it's actually very difficult. I already find it difficult in this tempo that you're playing, but we always have life because everything is moving. It's like a slowly moving circle. If we aim only for, let's say, downbeats of bars and react, we have this stasis. We have these like vertical meeting points that even if you play much faster than you should, always feels a little bit rigid. So I want you to think about breath when you play this. Now, you have the music in front of you, yes?
Yeah.
Bar 3. Do you agree that these are three beautiful chords? We don't need to exist in the quavers. Da dim ba dum ba dim ba di da di dum. Can you think of bar 3 as a transition here? We have bum bum bim pam dum pi dum ba di da di dum ba da ba da ba da. So this, for example, here at the end, it looks very involved on the page, but this is such a beautiful chord, isn't it? This. what I'm showing you, sort of playing this casual way over a Wi-Fi signal in a little studio. The point is that the musical line and the intention is the first priority, because you can play as beautifully as you naturally do, but if it feels that there are moments where a line is forced or a form is forced, we're not getting anywhere. You know, it's one of the reasons why I don't really get any joy, particularly from listening to perfect recordings of things. I find them unbelievably dull. I'd rather imagine this music and keep it precious in my head rather than going, oh God, it's this, right? You know, and this is a big trap of this movement. So I'm going to set you a task right now. Can you play up until the double bar and play it with a kind of, when I say fantasia, I mean letting it go. You don't add anything to it, but feel the stuff that's important to you, and everything else, let it serve the purpose of the next thing that's important to you. Be clear in your head that some stuff is more worthy than others, right? This is a sad fact of life, but just allow that to
Yeah.
happen.
So until the double, yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. Good, 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 good.
Mhm.
Right, we're going to move on in the Saraband, but I just want to leave you with a thought. You have a
Yeah.
great line, actually, and Lena was doing it as well. I love this because when it doesn't exist, that's painful. There's a wonderful line through it, but I'd like you to think about within the line whether there's space. You know, taking a breath doesn't mean the thing stops. You agree, surely, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And we can take a breath and everything dies as well. So I'll just give you the one that's in my head right now listening to you play is I hear, and perhaps it's just the connection here, but I feel this, and we're suddenly wading through thickness where we could have oxygen. And I think you know that. And I'm not asking you to break it up into sections, but you need to understand that bomba is on a different level than another. And the sheer physicality of an interval up here and a one there seems to ask for an understanding of it. You play it very much like it's on one, say, almost vertical line, and it's not.
Yeah.
It's on multiple levels. And just show us in your playing that you recognize it. And I would say, is that how we call you? Teo? I see you're called.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Okay. So Teo, it often doesn't require us to do anything other than think about it, because I don't need you to demonstrate it to me. Just be aware as you play that we have stages. We get in touch with a voice here, and we get in a touch with voice here, and that's
Yeah.
it. I think then your work is done. Can you play, and I'm sorry for interrupting you, that I did have to make that point. Can you play from, I don't know, bar 9 or something? Bram, ba-da-bam. Great. Look, I'm gonna ask you one question, and the second thing I'll do is gonna ask you to play the whole thing for me, but in a very specific way. And then I will sadly have to leave you with this. But bar sorry, I'm just looking at the score. Bar 21. What did you
I
make
don't
of
really
bar
have
20?
bars.
Oh, you don't? Okay. It's the chord
Yes.
bar. How would you describe your playing off that bar?
I, I, I feel like it feels like a cadenza, like
Oh, sorry, Teo, I'm being unclear. I'm talking about the chord bar, the bar before.
oh
Bar.
the bar before.
Yeah.
Um,
Love your cadenza comment about the next thing. It's absolutely right. It's like a little dream. It's like a reverie. You sort of meander. The bar before.
yeah.
Okay, because of time, I'm just going to say you play it like it's the thickest, deepest, most intense bit of symphonic writing I've ever heard. Now, ask yourself: is that because it's a hard bar, or because that's what you think it is?
I feel
Bram
like it is quite of
bar.
a ending, or yeah.
I'm exaggerating. I'm playing it, or maybe too much like a non-event. But if we were playing it, let's say at the piano or the harpsichord, would we really be going da da dee ba ba da da ba bam bam? We get Elton John in for one bar. I don't like maybe if that's your taste, go for it. But I would ask yourself, is that because it's hard or not? So this is my little provocation to you. You don't need to answer the question. You know the answer, I think. Work out whether that's really what you want to be doing, because we can
Yeah.
thin out textures off the thickest chords if we want. We can play on some different strings, work on our bow control. This is all fine. But I feel the most important thing is that you make the conscious decision of not playing it how it might sound the best now, but how you really want, where you want to go with it. It's why I don't care if you play something out of tune or if the note squeaks or something, if I understand that your motivation is to do something and that happened along the way, then it doesn't matter because we can all practice in our own time and iron these things out. Just before I say goodbye to you for now, I'm going to ask you to do a thing that I always do on my own. It's why I often feel very relaxed about doing very stressful concerts, and why when Cecily asks me about a concert I'm doing in a few days' time, I look like I don't particularly care, even though I do, is because I tend to practice in two very separate speeds. So I love practicing slowly. I think it's the hardest thing, and I think it's super important. And I really sincerely think if you can play something slowly, unless there's something fundamentally wrong, like you've not worked enough technically, you can definitely do it fast. But on the flip side, practice something sometimes to see your musical ideas something obscenely fast. I'd love you just to play the Sarabanda through to me once, if you are okay with this. Just play it mezzo piano. I don't need you to hammer out anything or play it perfectly. Play it at this tempo. Bram, bam, 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 bim, Bum, ba-dum, ba-dum, ba-dum. And I would like you to understand the motivation, because if you play it with a certain lightness and a distance from it, more as a dance, you see from a distance. It's like looking at a blueprint. Instead of being up close and being within the thing, just see and observe what actually is vital to you and the things you could maybe lighten up through or move through. Because currently, a lot of these transitional notes for me, they feel like you're gluing and sort of wending your way through it. Which I think if
Yeah.
you looked at it from a distance, you'd see, like why? Why am I doing this? You know, it makes a simple journey feel like an odyssey. And you don't need that, and neither does the person listening to it. So play it once through. And I don't, look, please don't worry if something feels wrong. I just want to see what happens. Mess around with the phrasing. If you want, pause on one thing and then play even faster through another. Just dance through.
All right. I'll
Thank you.
try. Sounds like an interesting idea.
Yeah, but also, sorry. So start just in the middle of the bow, really gentle, quiet playing at this tempo. Dum, bim, bam, pram, pra. Really just float through the piece.
Sorry.
Okay, look, apart from the ending, I loved what you just did. And I say that because it's good sometimes to be critical. It sort of felt like you just sort of darted through it at the end. We still, at a
Yeah.
high speed, need the context of a phrase. But I loved it because to me, it shines a spotlight on the things that have been dealt with like this, that actually, when you're playing fast, you just let go. And the things that you hover on, even when playing fast, you need for a musical line and sort of your brain needs to sit on something. And there is your clue. It's suddenly like shining out at you. No, I need to look after this. But this over there, no matter how slowly I play it, this needs to feel like it just moves. And do you see what I mean? I hope that didn't feel
Yes.
like a wasted moment to you. We need to
No.
sometimes just noodle around just to map out the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Listen, you're really great. I'd like to be encouraged to take what is a fundamentally atrociously difficult music piece because it should be the most natural, like it's a complete gem of a movement that somehow physically feels like it's forcing you to fight and really and look after this and that. So it's a contradiction and it makes it very hard. And be idealistic. Go, how do I actually need it to sing and breathe? And then do that. don't go for the perfect end result, which feels like a concession. Just
Yeah.
just sing, you know. Okay, great. We can talk about it for hours. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, and thanks, Teo, for joining us today. Tiffany, do we have you? Are you out of class and with us here? Yes, she is. There she is. Great. So, the other movement we're going to look at tonight or today is the Chaconne, and you've probably all seen the mishmash of 14 violinists playing 8 bars at a time of the Chaconne. I watched it the other day and found myself both amazed and excited and incredibly frustrated by it, because I just wanted to hear what any one of them would have done with it. But I don't think there's a violinist out there who hasn't at least thought about the Chaconne in the last 4 weeks. So it's I think something that is really speaking to a lot of people right now. We have 2 people sharing the task of playing it for us tonight. We won't go back and forth between them because, like I said, that's incredibly frustrating. But we'll hear Tiffany's the first minor section, and we'll work with that for a while, and then we'll hear the major and the return of the minor from Brendan. So
Great. Hi, Tiffany. Thank you for joining in, and what an amazing piece to look at together. Can I just ask you, it's such a boring question, can you just make sure the camera angle is, I can actually see you. I can just see your head currently.
Camera angle, I'm afraid I can't move too much, but I can lower the camera itself. So if
Can you stand on a box?
I'm afraid I don't have boxes. Actually, I do. The troubles of being short. All right, this better?
Yes.
Okay,
Great.
perfect.
As long as you're not going to fall. I mean, yeah, it'll make a great viral video, but I don't want you to be injured in any way. Great. Tiffany, yeah, so hi. It's a lovely way. I think we should all play the Chaconne for each other when we meet for the first time. Can you imagine? Can you just tell me quickly, briefly, is there something about this movement that particularly interests you, means something to you? What do you feel about it?
Well, I definitely feel that it's a bit of a lifelong work, and you can definitely see at least a lot of change, even just going through the piece itself.
Yeah. And this is, what about that interests you?
I think it's really interesting in how it sort of imitates life, I guess.
Yeah. And then as the player, you are intrigued by the playing it to show other people that?
Yes, I'm also just interested in, well, there's also the technical aspect that I'm very interested in, and the subtlety, I guess.
Okay, listen, great. Also, I have to say, I did totally forget that we're about to watch, I think we're about to watch a video of you playing. So let's actually do that before I even start quizzing you about it. Thanks.
And you don't have to stand on the box the whole time, Tiffany.
Yes.
Perfect. Sorry, I just need to adjust something.
So let's share the video now.
Oh dear.
listen. How long do we have? This is just the most amazing piece, and thank you so much for playing it. I'm going to dive straight back into my little interrogation. Can I just ask you, what did you, listening to that and watching that, what do you think about it? How close rather is it to how you want to be playing it or envisage the music?
Well, certainly, I feel like definitely not quite there yet. I'm still working on it, and I am continually changing how I want it to be. So,
can I ask to be then specific in your thoughts? What is it about it that you want to evolve, look at, change?
I think one of the biggest problems that I might have would be variation in tone and articulation.
Lovely. So your answer makes me so happy, because if we're aware of that, then we can do anything, and you'll be able to play it how you want. I'm very happy you said that, because if you said that you wanted to play a few chords more in tune, I'd be like, wow, that's the extent of your ambition. You play the violin very well. That's fine. This is such a life-changing piece of music. I mean, it's, as you said, it's it feels like a life cycle. It feels like many things, and of course, it will have different meanings to different people. There's one thing we can address straight away, which is the sheer relentlessness of it. This piece is, I mean, it's written on immeasurable layers, right? I'm not going to try and demystify the work. But from the first note, there is no space currently, how I hear you play it. And I want to understand, when you start, even that, you know, as a violinist, we've sort of grown up very often listening to this music. It's already got all these connotations of difficulty, intensity, and real beauty. But I need you to ask yourself, what in these chords is different from other chords? Why is this chord special and that chord special but only exists to serve another one? Because right now I have the same train of thought and clarity focused on everything. So every step of the way, I am being told that this is the greatest thing. And it's exhausting. You're playing so well as a player. I can hear that you need to work, of course. I mean, don't we all? But we need to learn to make snap decisions that have nothing to do with how well we feel, whether we're unwell, tired, or stressed. It's just about listening to the fluctuations of the music. So you agree, I hope, that the music is the most important thing, like far and away from the physicality of this instrument and the history of the piece and so on, and whether you always dreamt of playing this piece since you were a little girl, you know, to make someone proud or something. Who cares? We put that all to the side and just ask yourself, what in that first phrase can I allow to just breathe lightly, and what do I want to really engage with? Can you just play the opening for me and just ask yourself that question while you play?
Sure. Are you asking me to just play it now?
Yes, please.
Okay, bye.
By the way, please don't stand on the box if you feel uncomfortable. Like, no, it's just so I can see you play. But if you feel you're going to fall off, we don't want that.
No, it's fine.
Okay, good.
I think.
Good. Lovely. Great. Now, this... But you see what my students have to put up with. I mean, it's hellish for them. Listen, the first note of the second bar. Well, first bar, depends how you look at it, you know? The second printed bar. D, G, B flat, E. Is that not taking you to the next one? Briam, dam. Ignore the notes underneath. Just play the top line. Now, of course, I'm, making it sound like it's the simplest thing. It's not. But we need to see that you feel the line. Even if your bow lingers, even if you have to give it some real depth of bow on string to make the thing sound. The moment we hear, you can play with the most beautiful sound, intonation, clarity, stage presence. And somebody like me who's very difficult, I admit, it's fine. I'm not the nicest person sometimes. But you've lost me. I don't care what you're playing because it's so vertical and stuck. And that's not you, by the way. You are much more interesting than that. And you know it as well. So I'd like you to approach these chords with a bit of disdain. Be less worshipful of everything here. Focus on the things that you actually think matter and run the risk of sounding a bit rubbish in other places. Great. Lovely. Now I'm going to ask you, look, we could spend the whole time just on this opening. To make this less painful and intense, I just would like to say firstly that sometimes it is worth spending a load of time on one line because actually everything we talk about now applies to the rest of the piece. I hope you agree. We're not taking it bar by bar and that's only there and wait till the next lesson to discover the rest of the piece. Nonsense. We're talking about universal musical truth here. So I'm going to ask you a question. If you were not playing it on the violin and it was, let's say, technically easier, would you be giving this big impetus on all the chords?
Not necessarily, no.
Yeah, great. Lovely. And I'm so happy you say that. Please keep that thought in mind when you're practicing. Because, do you mind if I just play you something quick rather than you play? Yeah? I'm going to play it vastly over tempo just to show you my idea of the line. It's like a bird's eye view. I was saying this, I know that you've been very busy, so I was saying that before you joined in, that sometimes when we play things a bit, under dynamic and actually faster than we would, we get to sort of look at it more like a map and we see clearer what we want to engage with. So listen, you're absolutely right. This is a very important chord. And then we have, so it's a horrible E, sorry. And then, so this whole ending of the phrase, it's not an event. It's just a thing that takes us back to bram. Bam, bram, bram, bam, bam, bam. And when we practice like this and think about the music, although of course, yes, you want to look after the bow and the left hand and stuff, this is not the important thing. We can train, I'm glad we don't train monkeys and bears to play the violin because we're not advocating animal cruelty, but you can train mindless things to play correctly, but the integrity of the music we're playing is very hard to approach. When we get to this bit here, this moment, dum, ba-dum, ba-da-da, it's like the music is expressly asking you to step back and to linger and look after the sound. So if we carry on the same force and direction of the opening, we've ignored completely the magic of, its truth. So please look at every step of this piece like it's a separate message. And you said absolutely rightly at the beginning of this, something about it being like a lifespan. Is that what you said?
Roughly, yes.
Yeah, yeah. And you will then agree with me that a life is made up of vast variety of emotions, events, feelings. You tell me that this is a lifespan, but you play it to me like it's one day. And that's not supposed to be it's not criticism to bring you down. I could say the same about the way I approach most things. So take your own advice, this thing that you already know, and actually ask yourself, how am I going to implement this in my playing? You know, we have this moment, amazing, like for me, one of the greatest things about this is the how does such a simple, innocent, questioning moment exist in a piece that's so certain? Like this, you know, the opening feels like it's the most certain thing in the world. And then we've suddenly got Bach writing this stuff that sounds like the sort of anxiety dream of an insecure student. I mean, it's fantastic. The piece has ended, but actually it hasn't. Okay, we're working our way. In fact, it's a bit like a beginner violinist becoming a better violinist and suddenly becoming a professional one day. You know, there's this amazing transition just in that one, in that one phrase. And I know this piece is difficult, but I'd love you to look at it with these completely fresh eyes. Understand like all the shapes and colors of these lines and then play them, because physically you play the violin really well. That's not, you know, and you'll practice and you're going to do some things better and so on. But the key thing is what you're saying to me about this music. I need to be able to hear it. Can you do me one thing before? I'm just watching the time. Can you? Do you have the music in front of you?
Yes, it's right there.
Do you know what? Can you play that bit that I'm just... So, play me from bar 31. So finish this phrase.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, finish that phrase and then start the new thing. And please pay attention to exactly what you said. Life cycles, thoughts, feelings, an arc. Don't tell me the same story.
Sorry.
Good. No, it's really great. So now we come to the point where we have to talk about personal opinion and taste. I encourage you to think differently to me. Thank God not everybody thinks like me. I'm very relieved about that, and I wouldn't wish it on you anyway. But see if you can switch round, just as an experiment, the way you're looking after this. You play these quavers. Bum, bum, bim, bum, 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 bum. It's fine, you know, it's good, and it's a matter of taste. And then the semiquavers arrive, and suddenly there's more stuff, and you play more involved, and you look after the line more. Can you switch this around? Can you play these quavers to me like they're this arc of sound? And then the moment the semiquavers come in, it's just a step back, it's more casual. And see what that changes. See if we suddenly discover a new color that maybe you want to use. Great. Look. So I'm aware, you know, I'm saying this and you're responding and it's fantastic. And, you know, we normally need to live with a new idea anyway before it feels good. But this is so much, it's a higher level immediately. I'm hearing an understanding of a line. You're not being melodramatic and overdoing it, but you're looking after these quavers, and we feel that they have a purpose. Then suddenly the semiquavers exist, and we can breathe. They're still important, you're still looking after them, but they flow, they dance. And it means that when we get back to the chords and the more vertical pillars, we can, because we've had enough air to last us. Now we can exist in this room, which is like this sacred temple, and we're looking at God and we're overwhelmed, oh my God. But you never allow us to die with like awe, because you add oxygen and light into the room. And if you give us, you know, intense paradise completely, it's a saturation. You know that thing when you've got like too much of a good thing. We don't need it. Allow the thing to flow. And you just did it so beautifully. So maybe one suggestion for you when you practice, because you'll have your way of working it and your goals and so on. Challenge yourself to find different ways of playing each phrase. Even if maybe in principle you disagree with it. Just see what happens. You might unearth a clue that you actually really like and you weren't expecting. Does that make any sense?
Yes, it does.
Thank you so much for playing. Lovely.
That was really great. I love what I haven't heard someone say that before, that you're looking after the notes. I love that idea, that you're just sort of tending them along and looking after them.
Yes, just cajoling, just checking, you know, and then letting them live, you know. But that's yeah.
Great thought. So Brendan will deliver us to the end of the piece, and just in case anyone's wondering, he is using a Baroque bow. So if it looks, and he's also very tall. So we've got a tall guy with a short bow.
Got it.
And more Bach.
Great. Oh, I can't see you. Hold on. I know I can't see you. It's my fault. Hi, Brendan.
Hello.
How are you doing?
Yeah, good, thank you.
Good. Listen, it's this piece is so dear to me. So, and somehow the Chaconne really like, I get really wound up when I play it and when I listen to it, not in a bad way, but I feel really strongly about this. So I'm listening to you play even in this video, and I keep wanting to interrupt it to say that I love that what you did there, and then I want to go, why are you doing that? And it's surreal that we're talking about such a majestic thing, and of course we are not meeting even face to face. It's not like we can even play it together and stuff. So sorry for that frustration, but thank you so much for doing that. I am gonna, surprise, surprise, ask you as well what I've asked everybody else quickly. What this piece is to you, and what is it about it that fascinates you or not?
I suppose the kind of fascinating point I would say about it is it's kind of I think it's like ability to kind of completely transform from one thing to another.
Yeah.
Yet having that kind of all being underneath that same umbrella. And I think the kind of point of it, like you said earlier, of it being like a life journey. I really like that because it's kind of that idea of you never really know what's coming next round the corner, and it's kind of all these twists and tails. But at the end, you kind of end back at this kind of starting point. It's like it's still the same thing going in that direction, but it's kind of like weaved around. So I find that I think yeah, mainly that, and just yeah, its ability to kind of lose you as well when you're playing.
Yeah.
And the kind of like the ability of it as you're playing it just to, you know, completely change what you plan to do and do other things because you can kind of, I won't get any more cheesy about it, but you know what I mean.
But that's, look, I'm raising my hands with joy, not to make you stop. That's exactly it. So the problem with you saying something so true and wise and wonderful is you've got to show me that that's what you are feeling. Okay, it's like a good problem to have. Good, you've reached some sort of nirvana-ish state of mind. You see it, so now it's your duty to act on it. If you are ignorant and blind or whatever, don't show it to me. You know, it's one of those, forgive him, Father, for he knows not what he does. Unfortunately, you understand. You've just told me you feel this and you know it. So I need you to, okay, this is now, we're almost like skipping a few steps in this. I think you understand why I'm going with this. And I think you also agree. You have this idea, you have this understanding of it, and we need it to manifest much more in your playing. I'm now just going back to a little bit at the beginning. I've questioned you. Why do you play with the Baroque bow?
Mainly for articulation issues. So like, I mean, well, most of it, the way I'm trying to do it, it is, you know, kind of how this bow works quite well. So you know, I tried it at first doing it with the modern bow as well, but just the articulations I was looking for was easier to do with this bow.
Great. Look, so that's a brilliant reason. And again, I'm going to please understand that I say this with really with kindness, because you can do it. It feels to me like so that's fantastic, but it feels to me when I watch you, and it could be, you know, the quality also of the video. Let's be honest, it might be. I might say something different if we're in the same room, but it feels to me like you are being you don't want to play with Baroque bow, and you're trying to play it with this really intense, like, long arm. It's very confusing, because I agree in principle, absolutely, you're right for the phrasing of the line, and there are moments where I'm like, give the man a really like hard, rigid, straight modern bow, because that's clearly what it feels like you want. So I'd ask yourself whether you are fully engaging in, you know, the connection between the mind and the body, if it's there, if you're really actually looking after this articulation that the Baroque bow helps you. We don't need to talk about it more. It's just, I just want to throw that out there. I think your reasoning for playing with the Baroque bow is absolutely right. I think it's great. So use it. Really take advantage of that thing when you practice, when you're taught, so on and so forth. Now, with the caveat that I love what you're doing and just keep doing it and learning, we have to, unfortunately, like with everybody else, talk about the things that I can maybe suggest you do better, right? That's unfortunately the scenario. So can we talk about the end, which I just think is the most amazing end? The end seems to last, it's over a page long. I hope it really does feel like this whole thing, it's a wave. It's the summation of the whole Chaconne. Actually, honestly, it's the summation of the whole Partita in one long passage that for me starts after the there. And from then on, we exist only for one reason, which is to play that. This is the only reason this happens. Okay? Do you feel like that's an idea you can get on board with?
As I find it's kind of more personally. I find it's kind of surging towards this at 249 where the main theme comes back. Kind of feel it's kind of that quaver rest, which I don't know, is probably about the first rest in the entire piece. It's kind of this breath, and then it's kind of re-arrived as such.
Yes. So this is one of those moments. Look, I agree with you. It's one of those moments where we can almost like have two truths going on at the same time. Yes, and also my point about the last chord being where we are all going to also stands. Yeah, yes, absolutely. We don't ignore this transition into bram, bam, bram. But this chord is not our landing arrival point. It's still one step along that way. But I agree with you. And it's really funny you say that with such conviction, because there's only one thing you've done in this playthrough that really jarred with me personally, musically. You gave so much importance to bar 248. Oh, and perhaps you wouldn't do it like this now. I don't know. But you set it up so beautifully to land at bram, bam, bram, bram, and then in this completely irrelevant, unimportant, but pretty colourful bar, you landed on it like dom, ba, 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 like we want to listen to a scale. It's really interesting. You know, you did it, so, you got this, you know, this sort of circular, like wheels turning motion so well. This only serves one purpose. It transitions, it pulls us. It's like a summation of everything that's happened before. So when you land on it and you linger on these notes, your tapestry starts unwinding immediately. And then you land on bram, bam, bam, and it feels forced.
Right.
And just, can you play for me from bar 229?
229.
Sorry, it's the... And please keep in mind the line of this piece.
Okay. I'll just turn the lights on because the sun's just gone down.
Good. Listen, so good. And because we are approaching it in this way, I need to. If you're doing it this well and responding this well, I need to pick up the next point. You have these rolling phrases. They teeter forward. The beauty, and I can't help gesticulating while listening to you playing. It's not because I'm trying to get you to do something. But I find this piece is amazing. It has like this repressed energy that's trying to break free, and it's actually trying to run to the end, but we don't let it, and that's where the power comes. I would like you to put all this stuff where you tumble a bit, you tumble a bit too much through the phrase. Have exactly that. I'm not asking you to lose that. Keep that energy, but retain it. So the phrase tumbles forward, but your execution of it stays whole within the bar. And I know this is like, it sounds maybe like conceptual gibberish, but when you do... Sorry, it's a bit in a while. Yeah, so this thing is it's a phrase that wants to escape, and we don't allow it, but we allow it to pull at the reins, even if we stop it. So you're kind of like, you're almost there, and the only thing that feels wrong and it dissipates the energy is that you do let it go. Can you play it, you could almost say mind-numbingly, in time once, but with that same driven line, please?
From same place.
Yeah, I mean, or you can pick it up from the beautiful phrase where you come down in dynamic and texture.
Right.
Question to you: why do you sit so much on the bottom A at the in bar 248?
I think just because I was kind of seeing it as this kind of whole tumbling motion, it's coming downwards to kind of the first beat of 248, and then this is kind of like feeling of like what's going to happen next, where's it going to go, and then it kind of just cascades up and down, and then you're back. So I think that I was trying to put like a bit of mystery on the A, as opposed to still surging it forward, maybe.
This is an interesting one where I would like you to see it my way. I'm very, very passionate about people finding their own truth in this music. What I would say to you is that this is clearly it's all going to the D. And if you can't see that, I urge you to look at it again. I understand the words you're saying. Like, I see intellectually what you mean. And the next one maybe should be, and then a low F, which we can't play. But it's just not. That's what it is. The A is in some ways the least interesting of all these notes. The moment we play A, it has to resolve to a D. He's even marked. And we should end the piece there, except that we don't, because he constantly brings us back to this inevitable truth, which is Bram, bam, Bram, Bram. And I'd like you to engage with this as an idea. And then once you've done that, if you don't think there's anything of merit in what I say, totally do discard it. It will have much more importance if you land on the A and really believe it than anything I'm saying. But please experiment with that. So, okay, you know how you're playing with this color towards the end? I don't remember now which bar. You give it this beautiful distance, and there's a different texture, and you play it quieter. You know, the way you just started. I love that. And this is a moment where we can say about taste and idea. You did quite a few things in the second half of that second half, so like the last quarter, let's say, that are unexpected to me, that I wouldn't do. But I loved them because they felt like you either believed in them, so that's great, or were trying something out, which for me is the most beautiful thing as well. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Yeah. It's in complete contrast to the way you played the first half of that second half.
Okay.
So you might have these ideas for phrases, which you talk about, this and that, and these chapters and this color and this thing. I'm not hearing it at all, like almost to the contrary. So I want to. Do you have numbers in your score?
Yeah.
Bar numbers. So bar 209.
Mm-hmm.
That extraordinary second chord of that bar. That, and maybe you'd play it differently now, but that you just plowed right through like it didn't exist. It's, I think, the most startling thing in the whole piece. This done, we have. I mean, it's heartbreaking. It's the most precious, outrageous thing. It's like Bach's just gone off on one and just plucked this bit of genius from the end, gone, here, have that. And like in the most casual way, it's just there. He's not built up to it. He's finished the phrase and bang, there you go, deal with it. So engage with it. Show me that you're aware. You played it like it just belonged to the previous key and over. And I can allow myself to be this like blunt about it because you have high aspirations to find the magic in it. So you have to then live that. Can you please play for me that whole arpeggiated section? Don't do the whole thing. Sorry. Do like 4 or 5 bars before this little double bar. Brendan. So much more, there was more space. That felt clearer. You delineated it, you understood it. Now, sonically, and it might be Zoom, it had the same intensity, angle, and approach that everything else before. Is that intentional?
What do you mean that's B flat?
Yeah, this new key that we're momentarily in.
Yeah, no, if it came across as the same as that arpeggiated bit, it shouldn't have. That's probably.
Yeah. And it does. So find a way of even over Zoom to show me that it's not. Because between us, I know it's not Zoom, it's your playing. Because I can see how you're doing it. I don't have to hear it. And we have to be honest with ourselves about it. For the purpose of exaggeration, just a look, the sound. Whatever you do, it's another world. Take us into that other world, and then you can find a way of, not making it too much or so on and so forth. But play with it. You have this material there that is so precious, and if you don't use it, it's borderline offensive. So really indulge. And if you go too far, so what? We're sort of practicing. There's nothing wrong with like overdoing it.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, you're gonna. It's much easier to overdo it and then sort of and then make it more refined. But if to me it sounds like the same thing, then we have a little problem musically.
Yeah.
Can you just play the same thing again? It's much better. It's clearer. I'm all, look, we're talking about very big things that we need to live with a bit to get. But the approach, we can tell the approach straight away. And there was clearly a thought of doing something that took it out of its previous world. And it's, in fact, this B flat is quite, in a really cool way, it's quite violent. It snaps you out of what happened before. There's nothing subtle about it, even if we need to be subtle in the bow. Brendan, just before we end this, can I ask you just to play from the top of that second half and just play for a bit? And I'd like you to, everything you've said to me, which resonates so well with me and the way I see it, can you show it?
Yeah.
Thank you.
From 209.
Yeah, I think so. No, sorry. From the top of what you played for me in the audition video, yeah. I don't know. I don't remember which. I think that's 133.
Yeah. Where do you want me to go up to? Sorry.
No, just play for a bit. Just play and let's really enjoy the differences between phrases and lines and colors. Good. Lovely. Can I thank you very much for that? Can I ask you to experiment with two things when you practice? These lines of semiquavers. Allow yourself to think about them more like they're more incidental things that go. Not every moment that it sort of changes a key or passes through a key is an event. Or it can be if you really feel it like that. But allow yourself to think that maybe some aren't. They're just sort of transitional keys. I'll give you, for example, a specific example of that is 157, 158, 159. You land quite strongly on the A in 158, where actually we're very interested in. These are amazing expressive intervals, and maybe 158 is just a little transition period rather than landing on everything. And that way we're not sort of solidly like marking out every single step, stuff like this. You play these, so much of it you play so well. I'd like you to consider playing things like 150 and 151, where you only think about the melodic line. So this chord at the beginning shouldn't be a thing that takes up all your attention. Maybe one way of looking at it could be. So invert the chord. You don't have to do it like that when you perform it. I'm not saying this is the way to play it, but it could be a nice mental exercise to direct your focus only on the fundamental, which is not. It's. And just see if that changes the way you play. I'm trying to think of. Okay, yes, and the last one, and this is something that really fascinates me about this moment. You know when you have all these amazing dum ba ba bum, bum 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 bum, these D's and then the A's. For me, and maybe this is something that says a lot about my mind, that is the interesting thing about this passage. Bum 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 bum, bum 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 bum, bum 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 bum. Who get the hard part is actually the unimportant thing. These. And we don't do that with the tempo. We don't do blah, 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 blah. But my point is that this amazing bom, 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 bom is like the truth. He keeps us on D. He keeps us on, what is it? Is then the A and then D. This is our anchor. It's our root. It's like our reason for this whole thing existing. And then these ba 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 bum 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 bum. They're incidental. Don't get the fact that this stuff is hard and there's intonation and accuracy and quality of sound, meaning it's important. It's not. It's one of those things that, for me personally, is really hard to play, but it's just a beautiful decoration. And the thing that's really easy to play is the thing we should understand, that if we missed those D's and those A's, the whole thing would fall apart. But with those little interludes, I'm not so sure. I think we could just have A's and D's and the piece would work. He's constructed it so beautifully. Listen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I allow myself to be very nitpicky. I mean, I've done that with you all, but with you, partly because you've finished this partita, I've allowed myself to be particularly frustrated in the way I'm demanding of you, because we've ended this life-changing work, and I know that you can go away from this and ask yourself these things, because I think you clearly know it, and I just want you to make that connection from here too. Great, really good.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Amazing. Thank you, Brendan. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you so much for all of it. Does anyone have any questions? We have a few minutes. We can unmute people in the Zoom, or if you've got questions on YouTube, we can pop them over here. Anyone? I've got my... Who's still around? No questions tonight.
Look, we've answered everything. We've mastered this work. There's nothing to say.
Well, I have some things to say. So I've just popped it into the chat for everyone. If you enjoyed the way Daniel thinks about music, which I certainly do, I know you'll enjoy his recordings. And they are available. He's got an amazing album called Dust. And Daniel, is the Bach out? I couldn't find it.
Yeah, the Bach is out, but it's on the record label's website.
Okay, so you can all search for that. You're clever. You can find it yourselves. But please support him and buy his albums. Don't just stream them off of Spotify. Um, and really, there are no questions. That's amazing.
No,
You've
listen,
given us.
if I can say, like, I think what we're doing here is really hardcore, serious music, and what I love about what I've heard of everybody's playing is that you all have an understanding of the instrument. Thank God. It means we can talk about the interesting stuff. And then if we're going to allow ourselves to play such extraordinary music, I think we can be very tough on ourselves, very demanding. And that doesn't mean unhappy or dissatisfied. You can go away from absolutely, challenging yourself at every step of the turn and going away super happy, even if you didn't manage to do it. I think despondency. No, that's not the right word. I'm tired. When you're completely, you sort of just play it and hope for the best. I think is totally sinful. I'm not religious at all, but I love referring to God and sin and blasphemy when we encounter music like this. A lot of, for me, the first four movements are profoundly human, and then the Chaconne is completely divine. And it's the one movement that slightly offends me when I feel that it's not being looked after. The others, sure, muck around, do something hyper virtuosic or romantic with the Allemande. I won't like it, but it doesn't bother me. That's just how you play. There's something about the Chaconne that pains me. And I kind of want it to pain you as well when it's not right. I want you to kind of to feel that you need to get deeper into it than just playing clean or in tune or so on and so forth. That stuff is easy. I'm so impressed with you all.
Daniel, I think we do have one question. Ross has got a question for you.
Normally Cecily picks on me if no one says anything, so I'm just putting myself forward anyways. You were talking about when Brendan was playing about Baroque bows and saying, why don't you give this man a modern bow? When you record your music, do you play on modern instruments and modern bow, or do you use a Baroque violin and a Baroque bow?
Yeah, it's a lovely, lovely question, Ross. No, I play on a modern instrument with a modern bow, and the reason being is that I love these two. So I love this violin and I love this bow, and it doesn't particularly go any deeper than that. Like for me, there's something a bit perverse about what we do because we're playing on an instrument that hasn't changed for quite a long time. Like I love new music and mucking around with sound. It's not. I don't even mean improvising in a certain style, but messing around. And I find the fact that our approach to the violin feels, in general, I won't speak for those of us here, but feels like it sort of lingers in some other time when actually the way we listen, the way life has changed, architecture, art, everything seems to have transitioned at a much faster pace than our understanding or our approach to these instruments. So for me, the idea of playing on something old doesn't work with me, even though the greatest instruments do tend to be old. The reason I was asking Brendan particularly about the Baroque bow is not because I have any particular feelings either way. It's because I care about when we do something, whether it was done purposefully, like a bit like we talk about why do you do this phrasing. It says a lot about somebody if the answer's there or if the answer is I don't know. So I know I've gone off on a tangent, but I don't care what people play on as long as they thought about it and then engaged with that thing. And my comment to Brendan about give that man a modern bow is I feel that sometimes in the bow stroke, there's an urge to like seize the sound in the string and make it like scythe out through the audience, which seems to be at odds with this beautiful curvature of this softer, shorter bow. And it's just an instinctive reaction to how we watch.
Cool.
Okay, can I give you a fun fact, just in case you actually cared about the question you asked me, Ross? I used to play for 2 years on the Viotti Strad. I did for 2 years, which then the Royal Academy of Music had already bought, but then now they just don't really allow anyone to play on it. And my other violin that I was playing on broke in the middle of a concert, split halfway down, which is such a freak accident. So there must have been something wrong with the wood. Anyway, it was quite traumatic. So I just decided to ask a really, really brilliant violin maker to make me an exact copy of the Viotti Strad, which I really loved. So I don't know. It's got a personal connection as well. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's about it.
That's really cool.
cool.
All
Thanks.
right, everyone. That was a great way to spend a few hours.
Thank you so much.
And I'm so inspired. I'm just going to share a little bit of information about upcoming classes. I thought this would be a 2 or 3 week experiment, and now I'm talking to people about July. So we have lots of things coming up. There are the links to Daniel's discs, a little bit of information about the next few classes. We have next week, Igor Yuzefovich is going to hear the Mozart concertos. So if you're preparing for those auditions, this would be a great opportunity to hear from him. And then we have viola for violinists, which is going to be a fun class. That's with my old colleagues from the Cypress Quartet. Elizabeth Kufaroth will be teaching at the end of May, and then my great friend Suvin Kim will take the first class in June. I'm looking for performers in June, so if you're interested, give me a message and let me know. And if you're rolling in money, send us a little and I'll pass it on. And I think that's it. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you so much. Bye, bye, bye.
Bye.